Hey guys, welcome to the KYMRON Maintenance channel, and today we're going to go over the maintenance and setup for an RH14G KYMRON excavator. So the first thing we're going to check is the hydraulic lines to make sure none of them are loose, both the external lines and the internal ones under the main body. So you would start by checking your hose lines anywhere that a hose attaches to one of your push rods. This would be a 17mm fitting. Now you got one on each side of your push rod, one on each side for your thumb, and one on both of these for your top cylinder. Now let's go into the body itself and check the other hoses just to be safe, make sure nothing rattled loose in shipping. You got two 12mm bolts that are holding this bottom base plate in place. Once you remove those bolts, you'll be able to access your whole hydraulic manifold. And there we go. Now it's always a good idea to check your hoses before you operate the machine, just to make sure nothing's loose. Maybe give them a quick wiggle. If any of these can wiggle or move at all, that's a problem. And you need to tighten up whichever little nut you got on whichever line. And we're just going to do a brief cover on that though. We're not going to go through extensively. So after you've checked all your hoses and made sure all of your hydraulic lines are intact, we're going to cover the grease inserts. And this is something you might have to do routinely. If you store it outside and it gets rained on, you want to prevent the rust, make sure you grease your inserts. You have one at just about every single pivot point or anywhere there's a big bolt. So some, like the one on the main body, will look like this style nipple. Now to use those ones, you have to use a grease gun that actually clamps over the nipple, like this one. You're going to get a couple grease guns with the provided toolbox. The other style are going to require a sharp point, like this. It goes into a bit of a point. This would be for your main plungers themselves. They usually have this style fitting on it. And there's a little ball bearing in the center. You push with that sharp point to be able to pump grease into it. After you've checked all your hydraulic lines to make sure you don't have any loose fittings, and you've checked all your grease inserts, next you want to check your hydraulic tank. Now I know there's a temperature gauge on there, and the hydraulic oil will expand as it gets hot, but the general rule of thumb is to fill it about halfway to that halfway mark every time, no matter what. The reason for that is because if you overfill it, you're going to put too much pressure on the lines. Anytime you try to make this plunger go out, you have to take the oil from the opposite side of the plunger and put it back into the reservoir. So you have to have enough room for a return. Okay, this is the 14 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine that you're going to find in your RH14G. You'll notice this is the view you'll get from the very rear end. You have your muffler, your carburetor, your spark plug, and this is how you check your oil. There's one of these on both sides, so you can check it from the front if you need to. But you could also fill it from the back without ever having to take off that grate. You should be able to fit a funnel in there. Now if you ever have to do an oil change, you'll notice that this nut right here in the very bottom of the engine block is your oil drain. Now the body itself has cutouts, so you can just put the oil pan under the body, remove that nut, it'll drip straight into the oil pan without dripping onto your body. Now if we shipped you this unit on a freight truck, more than likely we've cut off this fuel disconnect switch right here. Anytime you have it on a trailer for more than 2 hours, you want to flip this fuel cutoff, otherwise gas can bounce into your spark plug cylinder and your engine will get hydrolocked. When that happens, it won't turn over. You'll try, it'll just make one singular chunk sound, and that's it. But there's an easy way to fix that. First, you would pull your spark plug out, and then you would turn the key over just to shoot gas out the back. And I'll show you exactly what I mean on this unit beside us. Okay, so if your engine is hydrolocked, you first have to take this plug off of the spark plug, and then as long as you have a deep socket and an extender, I'm using a 21mm socket for this model, you should be able to pull it out without taking this grate off the back end. But if you need to, these are just 10mm nuts on the actual metal grate. Okay. Now that we got the spark plug out of place, you'll see the cylinder for it is just open in the rear. Now here's the tricky part. When you try to turn over the key with the spark plug out of place, you're going to see the excess gas shoot out of that cylinder that the spark plug usually goes in. This is how you fix the hydro lock. It's going to get a little messy. Probably hold a rag over it if you want to be safe. Now that we got most of it out of there and it's just vapor, we could probably install that spark plug again and it would work just fine. The last thing we're going to check is our tension on the tracks. Now this one's tensioned pretty good, so I'm not actually going to adjust it, but I'm going to show you how. Mainly, you want to make sure these little ridges on the bottom can't go out of the rollers, so you know it doesn't roll off if you go over any bumps or get loose at any point. Looks like this one is nice and tight. So you got two 10mm nuts. And then this is a bolt style tensioner. You'll see you have one retaining nut. This is what holds it in place. So you have to start by backing that off, lefty-loosey. And then this bolt right here is what's actually going to tension the track out. As you turn this righty-tighty, it's going to make the wheel roller go out further. It's going to put more tension in these tracks so they're stiffer. And then when you're done, make sure you tighten your retaining nut so it keeps its place and it doesn't back out on its own from vibration. And then reinstall your plate. Now that we've covered the grease inserts, the hydraulic oil, and the engine oil, the only thing left is to refer to the Briggs & Stratton user manual to know what weight of oils to use when it comes to an oil change and how often to change that oil out. So thanks again for watching. This is K&R Equipment Channel. You have a nice day.